Welcome all to lecture 20. Today we will be continuing with attachments and some experiments regarding attachment. We'll be looking at attachment over the lifespan, and we'll be also looking at how attachment in culture is different, as well as some critiques about attachment. Okay, so in Mary Ainsworth's strange situation experiment, there was later research done by Main and Solomon. They described anxious, insecure, disorganized, or disorientated categories of attachment as infants being those who had no coherent strategy for dealing with separation from the main caregiver, showed disassociation upon return of the caregiver, appeared dazed, confused, and mixed avoidant resistant behaviors on return of the caregiver. And this was very much common in infants who were subjected to severe physical and sexual abuse and neglect. So we're looking at attachment across the lifespan. So attachment is a theory that is not something that takes place in stages, although we did look at um, phases of attachments in steps, but we're looking at the impact of attachment now, which is the impact across one's lifespan. So we look at different characteristics of attachment and how what happens in attachment during childhood and how it affects adulthood. So we first look at characteristics of secure attachment. So as a child, they are able to separate from the parent. As an adult, they have trusting, lasting relationships. The child seeks comfort from parents when they are frightened. The adult tend to have a good self-esteem. When the child is able to return to the parent and is met with positive emotions, as an adult, they are more comfortable with sharing feelings with friends and life partners. When the child prefers parents to strangers, as an adult, they are able to seek out social support. Children who are securely attached at 1 year of age tend to be popular with peers. They are resilient, they are resourceful, and they are cooperative at school, as well as they are more empathetic to those who are insecurely attached. We now look at characteristics of avoidant attachment. As the child, they may avoid their parent when the parent has come back or returned. As an adult, they may have problems with intimacy. When the child does not seek such comfort or contact from parents, then the adult may invest little emotion or um, have a good, a well-established relationship. When the child shows little or no preference between a parent and stranger, when they are an adult, they are unable or willing to share thoughts and feelings with others. Children who display avoidant attachment, which we've looked at 1 year of age, are vulnerable to becoming emotionally hostile or even antisocial. We look at characteristics of ambivalent attachment. As a child, they may be wary of strangers. As an adult, they are reluctant to get close to others. When the child becomes greatly distressed when the parent leaves, as an adult, they worry that the partner does not love them or they have insecurities in their relationships. When the child does not appear to be comforted by the return of the parent, what happens as an adult, they become distraught or their relationships often end in tragedy or it is distorted because of the insecurity that they have formed. Children who display resistant attachment by 1 year of age tend to be more dependent later on. They seek more attention from adults and they become easily frustrated and helpless when they're unable to achieve certain things. So, characteristics of disorganized attachment. At the age of 1, we look at a different time frame, which is at the age of 1 and at the age of 6, so between 1 and 6 years of age. Disorganized attachment, when the child shows a mixture of avoidant and resistant behaviors at 1, at the age of 6, they may take on a parental role. So they become more serious at a younger age. And they may seem dazed, confused, or apprehensive by the time of some children start to be caregivers towards their own parents, and this may be because of their current caregiver and the fact that the current caregiver hasn't formed a basis or a secure attachment base for them, for the infant or the child themselves to develop attachment properly. So that is why they tend to take on much stronger roles at a younger age. Children who display disorganized attachment, which is what we just looked at, by the age of 1, has a greater risk of developing of being aggressive, self-harming themselves, and those kind of um, harmful behaviors later on in life. Abuse and inconsistent care can shatter the child's sense of self and reality, and this is often puts the child in a dilemma, and so the survival instincts kick in, and safety for them may not be coming from the safety of the person who they should be getting it from, like the main caregiver. That is why the attachment figure that they then find themselves in is either being forced to take on the role of the caregiver or the parent at an early age, because there is no formed basis of proper attachment from the main caregiver. Research has found that attachment security influences a person's life well into adulthood. That's why we say that attachment is across a lifespan, which we have been looking at. Material satisfaction can be related to a person's attachment because of the impact of the attachment in the infanthood, and adults' parenting style can mimic the style to which they were exposed to as infants, thus causing intergenerational attachment style. So the way your parents formed attachment with you when you were an infant is most likely to impact the way you would form attachment styles with your child later on in adulthood. So we look at how attachment and culture affect each other. The way parents raise and interact with their children varies across socio-economic cultural contexts. And we know this because in the Western world, they do different things to those who are non-Western. Can the results from Ainsworth's strange situation be generalized across different social contexts? Okay, that's a big question to answer. Okay, socialization patterns and caregiving practices have an impact on the perceived stressfulness of the strange situation in different cultures. For example, Japanese babies are in close physical contact with their mothers throughout the day, and they even sleep in the same room at night. So in this case, the strange situation separation episodes may be very alien-like to the Japanese, and it's likely to cause significant distress in the infant because the infant is all the time with the parent, and then all of a sudden, if they have to be put into the strange situation, can cause great distress. Different cultures socialize their children differently. So German mothers, for example, they encourage more independence and they discourage clingy behavior, whereas the Japanese seek to promote interdependence. So that means they can be dependent, but there is the influence of a main caregiver, a strong influence of the main caregiver. Culturally valued ideas influence parenting styles. So our community influences our parenting, and so does our individuality. And that's an impact of culture and being an individual itself. An infant's response to aspects of the strange situation may not be an accurate indicator of the actual intensity of emotional bonds between the infant and caregiver because of the impact of cultural differences, like we looked at the German mother versus the Japanese mother. So, what is the impact of AIDS on attachment? 2.4 million people are affected with HIV and AIDS in South Africa. Here we are talking about our country now. And HIV/AIDS is a pandemic with dire social economic consequences that affects the emotional well-being of children. And attachment relationships are often disrupted because of the illness and the death of parents. So when there's a death of a parent, a child probably has to move away and live with somebody else and be in the custody of another caretaker. insecure attachments may result because of these situations and thus causing behavioral and social problems. So we now look at some of the critiques of the attachment theory. So the theory has made a significant contribution to the discipline of human development. It facilitates the understanding of social, emotional, and interpersonal development of children. Although Ainsworth's strange situation may be heavily criticized for not considering other contexts, like what we discussed in the previous slides, or variations taken into account, it does provide research and tools for measuring attachment security. Empirical research does support core elements of attachment theories, including the development of a secure base and internal working models. So, your secure base is creating your main foundation of attachment with the main caregiver, and internal working models is cognitively recognizing um, your main caregiver and strangers and those aspects. Attachment theory has also been criticized by psychoanalysts for only emphasizing the external reality and not the inner world of the child, and Bowlby advocates that social and societal support from the caregivers um, and influence from evolutionary changes, so biological um, evolutionary changes in childcare in the post-war period really did impact on his study of attachment. And that's where we end for today's lecture. In the next lecture, which is 21, we'll be looking at a new area of this section where we look at gender roles and development. Thank you.